All right, shalom to the hopeful elect. Barakatah Yahweh, by Shem Yahushai, by Shem Rakah, Hakwadash, Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahushai, Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahushai, Barakatah Yahweh, by Shem Yahushai, by Shem Rakah Kwadash. Double honor as always, Them Yad, to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone, who are the true teachers of Israel today. Peace, love, blessings, and salutations to the hopeful elect, Habayah from Adawadada, house of David, which are the brothers that's laboring day in and day out on the four corners of the earth, making their call of election sure, helping seal the elect of the nation of Israel for the return of our Lord Hamashiach Yahushua is at hand, and to the Akib and Akwath, who also listen, which are the brothers and sisters that listen and believe on the gospel of Yahweh Shem Yahushua. To you, I say shalom as well. So shalom to the hopeful elect. This is Brother Sagalai coming back with a lesson through the Spirit. Lord willing, this lesson is edifying for the brothers and sisters that view the lesson. I come to you with greetings, peace, and blessings unto the hopeful elect, unto the believers of Yahweh Shem Shai. So, Lord willing, this lesson is edifying, for those that have eyes to see and ears to hear, which is through the Rakak Wadash that we can see and understand and perceive these words, which is the Holy Scriptures. So the water Yahweh Shem Shai, for this Amah, for this war. So, this truth and life, this truth and light, which is life. So I'm gonna jump into it. As you see the title, I started the stream at first for whoever got on there and saw that I wanted to get a little bit of the World War II or World War One, action showing, the actual war, and giving a visual of what it looked like. But I'm gonna jump into it through the spirit because, I wasn't able to continue to keep that stream up, and they temporarily blocked it, which is fine. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and jump into it. We're going to Revelation, the ninth chapter, going into today's lesson, getting into World War I and set the stage. Because Exodus 15:3 tells us that the Lord Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushua, is a man of war. The Lord is his name. So the Lord, is a man of war. The Lord is behind all the war and all the things that go on the earth, for that matter. And in war too, now knowing and understanding that the Lord is a man of war, he sanctions war. And World War One, when you read in the Holy Scriptures, set the stage, for today, for all the events that's going on that you see today. The stage was set through and by World War One. So let's show that real quick as we get ready to start the lesson. This is Revelation, the eighth chapter. Revelation 8. Let's get a few precepts and go into that. So now when you go to Revelation 8th chapter, the last verse, it starts off by going into setting the stage for going into the start of the world wars, which would be in the ninth chapter, which we'll get to in a second, but starting here in Revelation 8 and 13, which is the last verse in this chapter. Revelation 8 and 13, and it reads, "And I beheld, and I heard an angel flying through the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, Woe, 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 which is destruction, 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 which gets into the three woes, right? Three being completion. So the last would be the one that would, you know, offset the rule of the wicked and usher in the kingdom of heaven, which would be through Yahweh Shai. So continuing on, and I beheld and heard an angel flying in the midst of heaven saying, Woe, 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 which is symbolic to World War One, World War II, and World War III, to the inhabitants of the earth by reason of the other voices of the trumpet of the three angels, which are yet to sound. So now, when you go over to Revelation, the ninth chapter here, now this is getting into the start of World War One, that first woe that was mentioned in Revelation, the eighth chapter. So now here we go. It says the fifth trumpet here in the blue letter, the bottomless pit. The fifth trumpet, it says the bottomless pit, which is getting to Europe, and we're going to touch on that here in a second. So now let's get into these woes. So now And you start here, Revelation 9 and verse 1, it says, and the fifth angel sounded, and the fifth angel sounded, it says, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. So let's read that again. Revelation 9 and 1, it says, and the fifth angel sounded, and we know 5 being symbolic, of power. It says, and the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven. So let's deal with that star falling from heaven. That star falling from heaven, it says, unto the earth. Now that's the fall of Esau, but more specifically, when you go into the star of World War One, it was a man by the name of Kaiser, Kaiser, Wilhelm, Wilhelm, Kaiser Wilhelm II was his name, and he was that star. When you go into it, a little more deeply. So the star that fell from heaven was more specifically speaking of Kaiser Wilhelm, who was the star of World War One, which is Revelation 9th chapter is referring to World War One, which World War One set the stage, for where we are today, and we'll get that through the precepts. So it says the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth. So the fall of that star, Kaiser Wilhelm, is also foreshadowing the fall of Esau, right? The beginning of the fall of the Edomites. But it was Kaiser Wilhelm who was that star of World War One. Continuing on, and it says in Revelation 9 and 1, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. So now that key, that was given, it was to unlock the fulfillment of the prophecies, to start the process of these World War One, World War II, and World War III, which the start of that, of course, was World War One, which set the stage for the rest of the prophecies to come to pass. World War II, which came after World War One, which World War II, came approximately 21 years. There was 21 years in between World War One and World War II. So that was a 20-year period, which is a very short amount of time, when you get into time as understood in the scriptures. It's a very, very short amount of time. And then it said the third woe will come, thereafter, shortly thereafter. So we are in the time, of the third woe. So World War One, the first woe set the stage. So this was war, and the woes, the three woes being unlocked. This was the start of that. So it says he had a key to the bottomless pit, right? He was given the key to the bottomless pit. And that bottomless pit is known as Europe because it lacked, natural resources, and it lacks natural resources. It was almost known in the ancient world as a black hole of sorts, as if it was, like an abyss, a pit. And when we go into that bottomless pit, I got a quick precept right here, through the Spirit, going into that, that bottomless pit, here's a quick precept getting into that, which is getting into Europe. And going into the fact that pits in the Holy Scriptures, through the precepts, how we know this is speaking even more specifically, about and to Europe. So this is so like here 1 second. This is the book of 2nd Ezra, the 5th chapter, going into that bottomless pit, which is Europe, which lacked natural resources. 2nd Ezra 5 and verse 22. We'll start there and get this pit. 5 and 22, it says, "And my soul recovered the spirit of understanding." The prophet Ezra is, speaking here. "And I began to talk with the Most High again, and said, O Lord, that bears rule of every tree, or every wood of every earth, or every wood of the earth, Salakia, and of all the trees thereof, thou hast chosen thee one only vine. Verse 24, in all the lands of the whole world, thou hast chosen thee one pit. So of all the lands of the world, this pit being symbolic, to land masses in the scriptures, you know, and in many cases, not in all, but in many cases, you know. Um, so it says, in all the lands of the whole world, thou hast chosen thee one pit, and that one pit, you know, is making reference to the children of Israel being that one pit, being that landmass that the Lord chose, but showing through the precepts that when we go back to Revelation 9 real quick and 1, and it says, and the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. So going back to Kaiser Wilhelm, right? Now that bottomless pit, once again, is Europe. And we show that once again through this precept here. Of all the lands of the world, thou hast chosen thee one pit, that pit being symbolic, to to that landmass which was referring to Europe. And once again, that star being Kaiser Wilhelm, and foreshadowing the fall of Esau. Now, as we go back, let's go to Revelation 9 and verse 2. And it reads, and it says, and he opened the bottomless pit, speaking of Europe, says, and he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose a smoke out of the pit, as the smoke of a great furnace. And that smoke is referring to, that that great destruction that came, the great destruction that came, which was at the start of World War I. And as we read through this chapter, we'll continue to dive into what that great destruction entailed. So Revelation 9 and 2, once again, he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose a smoke out of the pit. So out of that landmass, Europe, which was that bottomless pit, which lacked natural resources, why it was called a bottomless pit, it says, as the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. So once again, that goes into the great destruction that came from World War I, which was tremendous. And we're going to get into the amount of life that was lost and all of those sorts of things, and even get into an article here in a second, which I put up, in the thumbnail. We'll get into that as well. So let's continue on. So that great smoke of a furnace was the brimstone, the destruction, the great war that was going on at that time that had never, been of this sort on the earth. So that was the great fire and brimstone and destruction. That was a great furnace, right? And it says the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. So that was the war that was brewing all throughout Europe. So now, as we continue on, verse 3, and there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth. So out of that smoke, it says, came locusts upon the earth. So out of that great destruction that was going on, which was World War I, it says there came out locusts. Now, when you go into that locust, and why I tried to show the video on the first, iteration, the locust is getting into these fighters. World War I fighter planes is getting into those locusts, which they look like locusts when you look at them, right? Here goes the images. We put up the images here, and you see the images. Here's a good shot right here. All of these shots really are good shots of the World War I fighter planes, which look like locusts, literally, when you look at them, right? They look like locusts flying in the air. So this is what John the Revelator was seeing. The Apostle John on the island of Patmos, he was seeing these fighter planes, which he said looked like locusts. So let's go back. Revelation 9 and 3. And there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth, and that's referring to these fighter planes, right? These fighter jets that looked like locusts. It says, upon the earth, and unto them was given power as the scorpions of the earth have power. So it was just unto them was given power as the scorpions of the earth have power. And that was the power to do what? This type of weaponry, this type of fighting, was a new and improved way of it was advanced warfare of its time, which is why World War I, and the title is World War I set the stage for what? For today, right? So as it pertains to the sword, which Esau was gifted with that, you know, the perfecting and the advancement of military weaponry and military warfare, you know, once again, this was, revolutionary at the time. And it continued to be more, evolved in World War II, 21 years later, and then even more involved to now, which we're at the brink of World War III, which is that thermonuclear destruction, the ICBMs. But at this time, this was advanced, and the time frame to give more understanding, the time frame, of World War I was the early 1900s. In fact, it was July the 28th, 1914. So July 28th, 1914 was the start of the beginning of World War I, right? So this is in the early 1900s, 1914. So now let's go back. So those were the locusts that the Apostle John saw on the island of Patmos. So when we read it again, um, Revelation 9:3, and there came out of the smoke locusts, which were those fighter jets, upon the earth, and unto them was given power, as the scorpions of the earth have power. Continuing on in verse 4, and it was commanded them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, neither any green thing, neither any tree, but only those men which have not the seal of the Most High in their forehead. So I'll read that again from the top of the verse. Revelation 9:4. It says, and it was commanded them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, neither any green thing, neither any tree. And this is being spoken of in this manner because it will be World War III, right? Where we would see the prophecies in the scriptures that speak about that total destruction being of Babylon in various places around the earth, and how the earth was gonna reel like a drunkard to and fro. There would be great earthquakes around the earth, and that would lead to great flooding on the earth because it would be to and fro from that great you know uh, um, noise and that great shaking of the missiles, that nuclear wind, etc., right, which is going to change the geography of the earth. So it was speaking about this in this manner because this was setting the stage for what was to come. So now it says that it wouldn't hurt the grass or the earth, neither any green thing, neither any tree, but only those men which have not the seal of the Most High in their foreheads. And those men were speaking about, the different Edomite nations that were fighting against each other, right? So, hey, Shalom, brother Kazak by Yahweh, Yahweh by Shem Yahweh Barakatah, and Shalom to all the Akim and Akwath who are listening and viewing the lesson and will listen and view this lesson. Shalom. Now, so as we continue to read on, it says that it wouldn't hurt any green tree, once again, in anything on the earth, but the men that didn't have the seal, right? So those men, that didn't have the seal, beautiful precept, brother, Ezekiel 9:4. And the Lord Yahweh said unto him, go through the midst of the city, speaking of the angel, right? With the writer's inkhorn, through the midst of Jerusalem, which is the Israelites, and set a mark upon the foreheads of the men that sigh and that cry for all the abominations that be done in the midst thereof. As you go and continue reading in there, right? So it goes on to speak about that mark of exemption, the precept the brother just brought up. Beautiful precept. I'll continue on. It says, Ezekiel 9:4, that for the men that cry and sigh for all the abominations that be done in the midst thereof. And that mark, when you go into that word, is the word the which is the mark of exemption from judgment. Now here goes another, precept going into that mark. How we know what that mark is, because it says, that the men that to only hurt the men that didn't have the seal in their foreheads. So here's another precept of that in the book of Revelation 14, showing you this is who it was referring to. Revelation 14, and I'll start at verse 1, showing you that seal. Revelation 14 and 1, and I looked, and lo, a lamb stood on the Mount Zion, and with him 144,000, having his father's name written in their foreheads. These are the men that were sealed, along with the 1/3, right? The believers, as we keep reading. Verse 2, Revelation 14 and 2, and I heard a voice from heaven as the voice of many waters, and as the voice of a great thunder. And I heard the voice of harpers harping with their harps. And they sung, speaking of 144,000, as it were a new song before the throne and before the four beasts and the elders, and no man could learn that song but the 144,000 which were redeemed from the earth. These were the men that had that seal, right? That mark of the Wah, that exemption from judgment, which also goes down to the 1/3. The 1/3 also have that, which is the engrafted word, which is able to save your souls when you read in James 1 and 21. Verse 4, it says, these are they which were not defiled with women, which were not given over to the ways of the world, the philosophies of the world, right? It says, for they are virgins, they are pure. These are they which follow the Lamb whithersoever he goeth, these were the pillars that were set up when you read Proverbs, the 9th chapter, the pillars that were set up, right? In the Lord's church, that where wisdom would be. These were those pillars that was hewn out through the Spirit. So these were the ones that the Lord set up from the foundation of the earth. That's why it says they were redeemed from among men, right? So it says, continue on, these are they which follow the Lamb whithersoever he goeth. These were redeemed from among men. So these were the ones that the Lord chose at the beginning, of the world, right? Being the first fruits unto the Most High and to the Lamb. So these were part of the creation after Yahweh, the first fruit. Verse 5, and in their mouth was found no guile, because the Lord chose the believers. That's why the scriptures say, who can hold anything to the charge of the Most High's elect? And in their mouth was found no guile, for they are without fault before the throne of the Most High. So this is starting with 144,000 down to the 1/3. Because when you read in Revelation, the 7th chapter, which I'm going to get it and show that further, this is Revelation 7 going into that seal, right? Those men that were sealed, that it was told to the angel that they wouldn't be hurt because it wasn't the time yet, right? This is Revelation 7 and Revelation 7, I'll start at 1. It says, and after these things I saw 4 angels standing on the 4 corners of the earth, holding the 4 winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea, nor on any tree. So this destruction is being held back by the angels until an appointed time, until the Lord gives the green light, which that was going on even in that time. The angels was holding back the destruction then, which was in the time of World War I, which set the stage for where we are today, right? It says, so they're holding back the 4 winds of destruction, which are the nuclear missiles. Revelation 7:2, and I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living power. And he cried with a loud voice to the 4 angels to whom it was given to hurt the earth and the sea, saying, hurt not the earth, which is the same thing we read in Revelation 9 and 4. It says, and back in Revelation 9 and 4, and it was commanded them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, neither any green thing, neither any tree, but only those men which have not the seal of the Most High in their foreheads. So this is lining up perfectly, which is why I said, I titled the lesson, Ww1 set the stage. It set the tone for where we are today. Back in Revelation 7 and 3, it says, saying, hurt not the earth, neither the sea, nor the trees. It says, till we have sealed the servants of our power in their foreheads. So that's more the proof of those that will be sealed in their foreheads, right? They will be sealed in their foreheads. Why it says what it says back once again in Revelation 9 and 4. And it goes on to speak of the 144,000. And then in verse 9, it goes to the unnumbered multitude, which is the 1/3 that's going to be in receipt of salvation as well. So now, let's go back to Revelation 9 As you see it here on the screen, Revelation 9 and 4, and it reads, "And it was commanded them that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, neither any tree, or neither any green thing, neither any tree, but only those men which have not the seal of the Most High in their forehead." So only those men, which is speaking about World War I, which was the people that were hurt, were the nations that partook, which was predominantly a lot of Edomites that was taking part in this. Germany, Russia, England, and then ultimately America, and America, and it was some other nations that got involved as well. But Italy, a lot of them were Edomite nations predominantly. Ultimately, you also had the Japanese who got involved as well, which was which you had all the other nations in one way, shape, or form that actually were involved in at different times. But predominantly, these were the Edomites by and large. So this world war was being fought, which was Esau fighting for power amongst themselves, the Edomites. You know, so now let's continue on. Um, in verse 5. So now this is Revelation 9 and verse 5. It says, "And to them it was given that they should not kill them, but that they should be tormented 5 months. And their torment was as the torment of a scorpion when he striketh a man." I'll read it again at the top of verse 5, Revelation 9 and 5. It says, "And to them it was given that they should not kill them, but that they should be tormented 5 months." And that 5 months, going into that torment, was once again the start of World War I, which is set the stage for today, which was the start of it once again was July the 28th, 1914, through November the 11th, 1919. So from 1914 to 1919, which was 5 years, which was those 5 months, right? Those 5 months, it's a metaphor for 5 years. Once again, the Bible is written encryptedly. The Bible is written encryptedly. So that's why it says only the 144,000 will be able to learn that song, which is have the understanding to be able to teach it to the believers, and only the 1/3 would be able to receive it. So that 5 months is speaking of a 5-year period, once again, from 1914 to 1919, July 28th, 1914 to November the 11th, Salakia, to June, Salakia, from July 28, 1914 through June 1919, Salakia. So that was going into that 5-month period, which was 5 years, in fact. It was a 5-year period. Now the brother's bringing out some beautiful precepts. We're going to keep rolling through the spirit here and get a few more, going into World War I, which set the stage for where we are today. Now, in that time period of World War I, that 5 months, which is symbolic of 5 years, was the Treaty of Versailles. When you go into the Treaty of Versailles, and there's a lot of information here, and I don't want to go into too many things because there's a lot of points to be made, but I will, through the spirit, touch on this. The Treaty of Versailles. I want to make sure I got them dates perfectly again. It was a 5-year period, though. Treaty of, there it is, one of the most famous treaties, in the history, of war, right? So let's see if we can get it. Okay, the computer acting funny now. Here we go. So let's get that. Slovakia. Here we go. All right, the Treaty of Versailles, you see here on the screen. So, Treaty of Versailles signed in June 1919. So yeah, so from July 1914 to June 1919, that was that 5-year period, basically. Now, technically, the war started in July. But we know the start of that, the start of wars, that was the day where it says it started. But, the very beginnings of that, you know, um, was a few months beforehand, but that's the date that is given. But a few months beforehand was the start of the movement of troops, etc. Now, which equaled out 5 months, which equals out 5 years. So it's the Treaty of Versailles. It's the Treaty of Versailles signed in June 1919 at the Palace of Versailles in Paris, which I've been there. I've been to this palace before, of Versailles in Paris. And it's pretty impressive, actually. The architecture there, all the history that's there. It's like a lot of the kings and queens, rulers of the different French monarchies, etc. is found there. And there's gardens there and a lot of history. So it was signed once again in the Palace of Versailles in Paris at the end of World War I. Codified peace terms between the victorious allies in Germany. It says the Treaty of Versailles held Germany responsible for starting the war and imposed harsh penalties in terms of loss of territory, massive reparations, payments, and demilitarization. So that their military and a lot of their economy suffered because they were levied with being the cause of this great destruction, which we're going to continue to get into through this lesson. It says, and it goes on to say, it was far from the peace without victory that the U.S. President Woodrow Wilson had outlined in his famous 14 points. It says, in early 1918, the Treaty of Versailles humiliated Germany while failing to resolve the underlying issues that had led to war in the first place. Economic distress and resentment of the treaty within Germany helped fuel the ultra-nationalist sentiment that led to the rise of Adolf Hitler. So this was why 20 years later, you had Hitler and his movement and his push for dominance in the earth. Now, and then there was 14 points. So now that goes into Woodrow Wilson. So now this is the Treaty of Versailles that you see right here. You see all these devils sitting here together, and you had a few other nations that was back there, but primarily Esau. Esau was fighting for power, amongst themselves, which is what set the stage for today. Now, so that's the Treaty of Versailles. So that was that 5-year period, right? Found in Revelation 9 and 5. Let's continue on. Revelation 9 and I'll read Revelation 9 and 5 one more time. It says, and to them it was given that they should not kill them, but that they should be tormented 5 months. And their torment was as the torment of a scorpion when he striketh a man. And once again, as we get into verse 6, is going to continue to explain that. Verse 6. And in those days shall men seek death and shall not find it. So it says in those days men are going to seek death, but they ain't going to be able to find it. Yeah, beautiful. The brother put out a little history on the Treaty of Versailles, which I just read, right? Which is a pretty incredible place when you go visit it. There's a lot of history there. If you're into history, I've always been into history real heavy. So now, it goes to the reparations that had to be paid, which basically crippled the German economy, which really, in the spirit, you see that going on already with these proxy wars, right? Which is going on with before the actual, World War gets started, proxy wars. You see that right now with what's going on with Putin. So those crippling sanctions is going on and being sanctioned and cut off from the world. So now, as we continue on, verse 6, Revelation 9 and 6 again, in those days shall men seek death and shall not find it, and shall desire to die, and death shall flee from them. So this is that torment that was spoken about in verse 9, in Revelation 9 and 5. This is the torment. It says men were going to seek death and was not going to be able to find it. And this was the physical, mental, and emotional scars that the Most High tormented, these Edomites primarily with, in Europe that fought, and in America that fought in World War I. So this was the physical, the mental, and emotional trauma that came, which I'll show this here on the screen. This is part of that trauma, which is this is from PBS News Hour, and you see it says from shell shock to PTSD, a century of invisible war trauma. Because just 20 years later, you had, you know, a lot of these same nations in the world being involved, and 21 years later being involved in World War II. Now, in this article, it's a pretty good article all the way through, but I want to get to this part right here. Um, it says non-physical repercussions of the Great War, because what we just read was Revelation 9:6 that said, "And in those days shall men seek death, and shall not find it, and shall desire to die, and death shall flee from them." This was the emotional trauma, that came with World War One, and what set the stage, for warfare today as we know it, which has been highly advanced from this point. But at this point, this was high levels of you know fallout, so to speak. Which that fallout is really getting into the fact of the collateral damage that came with the war. So it says non-physical repercussions of the Great War. It said once it became clear that not everyone who suffered from shell shock in the wake of World War One had experienced brain injuries, which today that's called TBI, right? A lot of soldiers, they get PTSD, are tested for traumatic brain injury. It says the British Medical Journal, which also football players is called CSE, I think it is, or CTE. Slovakia is called CTE, which is the same thing as TBI, traumatic brain injury, which is going back to these brain injuries. It says the British Medical Journal provided alternative non-medical explanations for its prevalence. A poor morale and defective training are the most important, if not the most important, etiological factors. Also, that shell shock was a catching compliment, the British Journal said in 1922. Shell shock went from being considered a legitimate physical injury to being a sign of weakness, so it was flipped. But the Lord was tormenting these devils. And you're going, as I continue to read, and it's a picture that's coming up, it's going to show that here in a second. So this was the Lord tormenting Esau, right? So now as we continue on, it says shell shock, or continuing on, it says one historian estimates that at least 20% of men develop shell shock, which is called PTSD today. It says though the figures are murky due to physician reluctance at the time to brand veterans with a psychological diagnosis. So they didn't want to do that. That was something that was unheard of at this time, and it was looked at, as a weakness. The physical, the mental, and emotional scars of war, being shell shocked, being jumpy, right? Now it says psychological diagnosis that could affect disability compensation. Soldiers were archetypically heroic and strong. When they came home unable to speak, walk, or remember, with no physical reason for their shortcomings. The only possible explanation was personal weakness. Treatment methods were based on the idea that the soldier who had entered into war as a hero was now behaving as a coward, needed to be snapped out of it. Now, look at this dude. He is through. And you see here on the screen, this is a picture, an example. This guy is out of there. It says electric treatments were prescribed in psychoneurotic cases post World War One. It's a photo from Otis Historical Archives, National Museum of Health and Medicine. That guy is finished, as you can see on the screen, right? So these were the scars. Yep, that's a beautiful precept the brother Kazak Ban Yahweh put up. Revelation 6:4. And there went out another horse that was red, and power was given to him that sat upon thereon to take peace from the earth, and that they should kill one another. That was the Edomites. World War One was setting the stage for the Edomites fighting for power. Fighting for power, because these were the toes. We've been at the time of the toes for the last, for the last half day at least, right? Maybe a little bit more time, but definitely in the last half day, which is 500 years at the time of the toes. So this was that miry clay, that was mixed. It was that clay mixed with the iron at the foot, right, which is the end of that statue. Now, it goes on to say, British clinician described in his 1918, Lewis uh, Yeland, a British clinician described in his 1918 hysterical disorders of war, the kind of brutal treatment that follows from thinking about shell shock as a personal failure. After 9 months of unsuccessful treatment, patient A1 including electric shock to the neck, cigarettes put out on his tongue, and hot plates placed on his back or his throat. Yolan boasted of telling the patient, "You will not leave this room until you are talking as well as you ever did." It says, "No, not before. You must behave as the hero I expect you to be." So these were the things that were going on. So what's looked at today as mental health and trauma was looked at in this time in the early 1900s. You know, as an excuse, right? A weakness, etc. Now, um, that's right, brother. Hey, it's a fearful thing to fall into the hand of the living power. And this was showing that the Most High, as we go back here, this was the Most High invoking, this trauma onto these devils, right? Revelation 9 and Revelation 9 and 6 again. And in those days, men shall seek death and shall not find it, and shall desire to die, and death shall flee from them. So death was fleeing from them, because a lot of these men, it says they couldn't speak anymore. They had, terrible, man, this dude is finished every time I see this picture, but this is what was going on, right? Now, this was the shell shock. This was the shell shock. And it was unexplainable at the time. It was unexplained. Matter of fact, I'll just leave that up right there. So this is back in Revelation 9 and verse 7, because it says men will seek death and wouldn't be able to find it, right? So these scars, these physical, mental, and emotional scars took their toll. And those that survived, they were plagued. They were heavily plagued, in their spirit, heavily plagued for a lifetime, many of them. Now, when you go into, them being heavily plagued, the physical, mental, emotional scars, this was millions of people. Now, many of these people, when it says men would seek death and wouldn't be able, many of these people, were seeking death because they were traumatized so bad. But in World War One, more than any other war or event in history, World War One had 40 million military and civilians that died, right? 40 million that were involved in the war died, and 21 million, were wounded. So you had 40 million that actually died in this war in 5 years. So that was basically, 8 million was 5 years. So it's basically 8 million people dying a year, right? So it set the stage because there was no other war that had this level of death and trauma and hardship and inflicted this much economic hardship onto the world as this war that set the stage for where we are today. It changed everything. So now, part of that trauma was the lack of anesthesia at this time in advanced medicine, in the early 1900s. So, that was the shell shock. Now let's read verse 7. Revelation 9 and 7. And it says, and the shapes of the locusts, right? We went back to the locusts, which were the fighter jets. Here we go again. Right? It says, and the shapes of the locusts were like unto horses. Remember that word horses used a lot, often, when explaining the power. They were powerful. The Apostle John saw them flying through the air in the vision on the island of Patmos. So when he saw these locusts, when he saw these fighter jets in World War I flying, he said they were like unto horses because they were powerful, flying through the air. They were like locusts that was powerful, right? It says, and the shapes of the locusts were like unto horses, prepared unto battle. Their heads were as it were crowns, like gold, and their faces were as the faces of men. So these were the fighter jets that the Apostle John saw on the island of Patmos, and he saw men in them, and he said on their heads were like golden crowns. And I'm gonna show that right here. So those golden crowns, is getting into you know, the helmets. So now when you go, this was called, when you look it up, and it's a few different ones. This one is, if you look up German helmets, the German pickle helmet, and there's a few other things you can go into this to find more of the images. But if you look up German pickle helmet, like this one here, where you see the cursor at, it says it was like gold because there was gold on those helmets, and these are different versions of them. Some of them were for different types of officers or enlisted soldiers, but they had gold on them. And on a lot of them, you see it was an eagle that was there. That symbol is always used by the Edomites, right, throughout history. And so that was the gold that you see on there. This one being a little more fancy here, right? So now, and there's different names. This is Bavarian German pickle. And this here is called the Imperial German Ww1 helmet. And then the other ones go into armor, being known as armor. So now, let's read it again. Revelation 9-7. And the shapes of the locusts were like unto horses. They were powerful, prepared unto battle. And on their heads were, as it were, crowns. These were the helmets, like gold. This is the gold crown helmets, showing you this is from World War I. And their faces were as the face of men. So it was men that was in, that were in these locusts, which were these fighter jets, right? There were men that were in these fighter jets. So now let's continue on reading from there, right? So those were the faces of men that were inside. That was the gunners. Verse 8, Revelation 9-8, and they had hair as the hair of women. It says, and their teeth were as the teeth of lions. So it says they had hair, as the hair of women, right? And it says, and their teeth were as the teeth of lions. So now you saw on the back of that, let's go back there. You see how the helmet looked. It says they had hair as the hair of women. So their actual hair was coming out of the helmet, right? But you see, like on this one here in the middle, it says they had hair like the hair of women, so their hair would be sticking out the helmet. And then you had a lot of these helmets that, look at how they look. They were long. This is like the hair of women. So now let's go back. So let's go back to, let's read verse 8 again. They had hair, Revelation 9-8, and they had hair as the hair of women, and their teeth were as the teeth of lions. So let's get into that. Let's get into their teeth, which is symbolic, of their military might, their strength, their power, right? So this is their military might and power. So they had hair, like that of women, and their teeth were as the teeth of lions. So let's show that real quick. So this is quick precept. This is the book of Psalm 58. Psalm 58. And I'll go right to the point. In verse 6, it says, break their teeth, O power, in their mouth. Break out the great teeth of the young lions, O Lord Yahweh. So now, this is going into, their teeth, their military. So this is a precept that goes into that. I'll read it again. Psalm 58. Psalm 58. And this is speaking of Esau, because when you read in this chapter, it goes into the wickedness of speaking about how the wicked are estranged from the womb, right? And their poisons like the poison of a serpent, of an adder. Now, Psalm 58:6, it says, break their teeth, O power, in their mouth. Break out the great teeth of the young lions, O Lord, right? So this is going into their power once again, that they had, which This was the reshaping of the power structure of the Edomites, you know, going, into the America, Babylon the Great, that last ruling nation, Rome 2.0, taking over in the end. So they were fighting for, and jockeying for position militarily, you know, which led to, eventually World War II, which then led, to the reshaping of weaponry and warfare after World War II as well, after Hitler fell, right? Which America used that atomic energy during World War II, right? Which once again changed the way fighting went in the world, changed the way that nations, went about preparing for war, how they fought wars. Technology changed things as the evolution of war, which started from World War I, which dramatically changed, from fighting, conventional fighting to, modern ways of fighting, right? The sword changed from literal swords to guns and so on and so forth, and so on and so forth. From there, advanced. Now, let's continue on with Revelation 9 and 9. It says, and they had breastplates, as it were, breastplates of iron. It says, and the sound of their wings was as the sound of chariots, of many horses running to battle. So Revelation 9 and 9, once again, it says, and they had breastplates, as it were, breastplates of iron. And those World War I fighter planes, had breastplates on them, right? So those World War I fighter planes had breastplates on them, had armor on them. And then it goes on to say, which was the armor, and they had wings of a locust, right? And when you go into the breastplates, which was the armor that was on there, it says, and it were as breastplates of iron, because that's what they were made of, right? And it says, and the sound of their wings was as the sound of chariots. And the sound of those wings, once again, is getting into, you know, um, the sound that the planes made, that noise, them flying through the air. Once again, this was all advanced. This was all, you know, um, advanced technology and advanced warfare of this time. So that noise they made, that flying through the air, that was why it says it made this. It was like um, the sound of chariots. It says of many horses running in a battle, right? And on this one, this particular one right here in the middle, as you see where the cursor's at, you see the smoke coming out of it, right? So they would be making those sounds. Um, but yeah, they had armor on them. So now let's continue on. Matter of fact, I have a better diagram here in the spirit. Let's see if I can pull this one up. This shows some of the armor. Now this is over here. I'm gonna be over here. The cursor's gonna be over here. This is showing the different types of fighter jets that was used, right, in World War One. And on some of them, there's more armor. Some of them is a little less or whatever. But these are the different ones. That's the HD7, um, the Hanarat, the Saldo A1 was used by the Italians, the Royal Aircraft Factory UK, and then the SPAD skill, or the SPAD SX111, which was the French one, and the H6, which is also used by the French. These two top ones. So now, let's continue on. Revelation 9 and verse 10. It says, and they had tails like unto scorpions. Now, this is important. In verse 10, it says they had tails like unto scorpions. Now, when you go here, I'm gonna put in tail gunners. Let me put in tail gunners, because this explains that. Showing you how much, World War One is explained, because it set the stage for where we are today. Now, let me see if I can find, these are the tail gunners. And this is also known as dive bombers. Hold on, let me see. Make sure I got the right one. Tail gunners, World War I. These are the tail gunners. So now, Shalom to all the brothers and sisters that's getting on, right? And has been joining the stream. Hey, Yahweh Shem Yahweh Barakatah. So now, these are the tail gunners. Let's see if I can get a good picture of it. I'm trying to get a picture where they show the tail gunner in the back. This is a decent one right here, right? These are known as rear gunners or tail gunner. You see right here, it says tail gunner. Tail gunner. Let me click on this. This might give a good picture, a better picture of it. These were the tail gunners, which explains what it says when it says, and they had tails like unto scorpions. And that's given going into the tail gunners that was on the rear, of these fighter planes. Now, this was also, I want to get the ones that was primarily used only in World War I, because some of them are showing gunners that was used in World War II. But let's see. But these guns, these rear guns, will be on the back, as you see right here. These are like machine guns. Well, for people that understand the military nomenclatures and the weapons, this will be like a 240 Bravo or a 240 Bravo or a 249, which is just basically a machine gun. These were the tail gunners. Also, this guy over here. Let's check this one out. Boom. See where the cursor's at right here? Be like this guy here. These tail gunners. And that says World War II. It was using World War II. So it was more like these guns used in World War I. Now, so let's continue on. Let's continue on showing. Now, let's see. Hey, that's right, brother. Luke 10:24. For I tell you that many prophets and kings have desired to see those things which ye see and have not seen them, and to hear those things which ye have heard and have not heard them. So we are blessed to have this understanding to be able to go into this, right? To be able to go and give the understanding of the scriptures, to impart that knowledge unto the believers, right? Barakatah Yahweh Shem Yahweh for that. The Yahweh Shah broke the seals that we would have the understanding today pertaining to Revelation, the 5th chapter. Now back in Revelation 9, the water for that precept, Revelation 9 and verse 10 again, and they had tails like unto scorpions. Those were those tail gunners, right? It says, and there were stings in their tail. Those were those rear gunners. And their power was to hurt men 5 months. That was the 5 years of the war. Once again, going back to that time until the time of the Treaty of Versailles came up, which was, from 1914 to 1919. So that was the 5 months. The 5 years was the 5 months that's spoken of there for those that can receive that, right? And understand how the Bible is written allegorically, metaphorically, and it's encrypted. And not everyone can pick the Bible up and read it and understand it and break it down. It was only given, unto the believers, the 144,000, to have that understanding, and for the 1/3 nation of Israel to receive that understanding in the last days. So now let's continue on. So verse 11, just continuing on. And that's right, Revelation 3 and 20. Actually, post Revelation 3 and 8. Post that one if you can as well. And I'll read them both. That's the understanding that's being given. Right? That's given from Yahweh Shai, which is Revelation, the 5th chapter. Which is Yahweh Shai breaking the seals. Times when I go into prophecy, I might go into one on, Revelation, the 5th chapter in the near future, going into that, through the Spirit. But yeah, Revelation 3 and 8 goes into that. And then what the brother posted here, Kazak by Yahweh, is Revelation 3:20. The words of Yahweh Shai, behold, I stand at the door and knock, speaking of your mind. If any man hear my voice and open the door, I will come in to him and will sup with him and he with me. That's how the understanding comes. And the Lord is supping with you, which is given the understanding. That's right. Here we go. Revelation 3:8. I know thy works. Behold, I have set before thee an open door, which is your mind, which is this understanding. When the door is open, that's when the Lord can come in and sup with you, right? It says, and no man can shut it. So the believers, the ones that are supposed to get the understanding, no one can shut it off from you. No one can keep it from you, right? Freely we receive, freely we give. So it's freely given unto the believers. Because the scriptures tell you in Wisdom of Solomon, the first chapter, it tells you this word won't dwell in a malicious soul. So if someone is not intended for it, they're not going to be able to continue on, uh, getting this truth, believing, right? There's going to be some stumbling block. It says, I know thy works. Behold, I set before thee an open door, and no man can shut it. For thou hast a little strength, speaking of your faith, and has kept my word, and has not denied my name. The believers have kept the words, kept the faith, and have not denied the name of Yahweh Hashem Yahushua. Beautiful, beautiful precepts. The water Akya. You know what I'm saying? Now let's continue on. This Revelation 9:11, and it says, and they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, right? So it says they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon. Now, when you go into the angel of the bottomless pit, and you go into those names, this is getting into Esau, right? So let's look up the word. We'll look up the word Abaddon, because it says he had a name Apollyon and Abaddon. So let's look up the first word. Let's see what the first word is. The bottomless pit, once again, being Europe again. The first word there is Abaddon and then Apollyon. So let's look up the word Abaddon and see what it says. All right? Let's see what Abaddon says.
Strong's G3, Abaddon. Abaddon.
Abaddon. It means destruction, ruin, destruction, the place of destruction, the name of the angel prince of the infernal regions, the minister of death, and the author of havoc on the earth, which really goes back to Revelation 6:4 that the brother posted earlier, right? The peace that was being taken from the earth. We know that that's been the Edomites that have done that. When you go into Revelation 6:4, starting back with the Greeks, taking peace from the earth and moving forward. Now, when it goes into, again, Revelation 9:11, and they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, and in the Greek tongue, his name is Apollyon. Let's get Apollyon real quick, right? Apollyon.
Strong's G 623, Apollyon. Apollyon.
Apollyon, destroyer. It says the angel of the bottomless pit, the destroyer. So now Esau is the destroyer, right? Which is Esau. He's the destroyer. He's the man of destruction and ruin. And let's show that. This is getting into Esau. He's the destroyer. He's the man of destruction and of ruin, right? Because what is Esau known as? The son of perdition. The son of perdition. And let's show that in 2 Thessalonians. 2 Thessalonians, the second chapter. Let's show that, he is, the son of perdition and of destruction. So now this is 2 Thessalonians 2, and I'll start at verse 3, and it reads, let no man deceive you by any means, for their day shall not come, which is the coming of Yahweh Shai, except there come a falling away first. Israel had to go into captivity, right? Which that happened, about 500 years ago was the start of that. During the time of a man that you read in history named William the Conqueror. When you first start seeing a lot of our people going into captivity. A man named William the Conqueror, and that went on to, of course, Cristobal Colon, who's also known as Christopher Columbus, but that's another name. William the Conqueror. You start seeing our people, going into captivity. That was over, 500 years, nearly 500 years ago, right? So it says, let no man deceive you by any means, 2 Thessalonians 2:3. For the day should not come except there come a falling away first. Israel had to go into captivity. And that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition, which is known, he was known as destroyer, you know, Abaddon and Apollyon, right? He's that destroyer, the man of sin, the son of perdition. Speaking of Esau, now let's get another one, right? Matter of fact, let's show that verse 4, who opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called the Most High, or that is worshipped, so that he as the Most High sitteth in the temple of the Most High, showing himself that he is the Most High, which lines up with Isaiah the 14th chapter, where it tells you, around the 16, 17, 18 verse, somewhere around in there. The brother Noah, brother, you could post it, where it talks about how he would ascend into the heavens. It also says the same thing in Obadiah, the first chapter. That was him showing himself that he was the Most High. I will exalt myself, above the clouds of the Most High, above the stars of the Most High, in the clouds of heaven, right? So now, and that's right, bro. That's going into Maccabees when that peace was taken from the earth, which is in Maccabees 1 verses when you start from the top of the chapter, just read down to about verse 9, where it shows that. Now, let's continue. Let's continue to show another precept going into the destroyer, right? Destruction and ruin. He's the man of sin, the man of perdition. The scriptures also say that he made the earth as a wilderness, showing you he's that destroyer. Esau, Edom, right? And that's it right there. Isaiah 14:13. For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into the heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of the Most High. Speaking of the Israelites, I will sit upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. That's right, brother. That's right. Now, brother, Yahweh Shem Yahushua, Barakatah, to the brother Yahweh, a Barakim brother. Obadiah 1:3, the pride of thy heart hath deceived thee, thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock, right? I believe if you look up rock in that verse, it goes back to Petra, if I'm not mistaken. It says, whose habitation is high, that saith in his heart, who shall bring me down to the ground, right? So there you go. That's Esau, right? That pride. Thy pride hath deceived thee. Thy pride hath deceived thee. Thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rocks. Now the next precept we get, Brother Kazak Banya Hawada, is actually found in, right there, Habakkuk 2:5. That's the next precept. It says, yea, also because he transgresseth by wine, speaking of Esau, right? That's his philosophies, the wine of Babylon. He is a proud man, neither keepeth at home, who enlargeth his desires hell, and is as death, and cannot be satisfied, but gathereth unto him all nations, and heapeth unto him all people. That's why America is known as the great melting pot. He's gathered all nations and all people unto him, and everywhere he goes, he destroys it. That's why he's known as the destroyer and destruction and ruin, Apollyon and Abaddon, right? He's a proud man. That was that pride going back to Obadiah 1 that the brother brought. The brother, Akyawasam, Lord willing, we see you out at camp one of these days, brother Akyawasam. I know your schedule, doesn't allow you to, but Lord willing, Yahweh Shem Yahushua, I don't want to rock the sound, as soon as you can, get to see you again, bro. Now, so there you go. He enlarges his desire as hell, and is as death. Everywhere he go, he destroys. He brings destruction. That's the hell, the destruction and death. Right? He bring everybody to a low condition. It also tells you, if you can get it, brother Kazak Ban Yahawada, if you can get Micah 2, verses 1-2. That's another precept proving who the destroyer is. Right? Apollyon and Abaddon, the destroyer. Yep, there you go, the water, brother. Akyawasai, Micah 2:1. Woe unto them that devise iniquity and work evil upon their bed. Speaking of the wicked, which are the Edomites, when the morning is light, they practice it, meaning they put it into working. They devise plans, and then they start doing what? They start acting on their plans. And a big part of their plan was to destroy the children of Israel. It says, when the morning is like, they practice it because it is in the power of the hand. And Lord, when you read Second Thessalonians, the second chapter, it says, only he who now letteth will let till he be taken out of the way. The Most High is allowing Esau to fulfill prophecy, right? It says, so they oppress a man and his house, even a man and his heritage, right? Oh, Salaki, I didn't read the next part of that. All right. So it says, when the morning is light, they practice it because it's in the power of their hand. Micah 2:2, and they covet fields and take them by violence. They covet different parts of the earth. They did that in Australia. They did the same thing in different parts of Africa. They did the same thing, in Europe and in different places around the world. They definitely did the same thing in the Americas. They coveted fields and they took them by violence. They went and started killing everybody, right? So it says, in houses, and it says they take them by violence in houses and they take them away. So they oppress a man in his house, even a man in his heritage. So to the Native Americans, right, the hundreds of millions of you that were killed, along with the Latinos in Central and South America, hey, they made you take on their customs. That's why you Latinos speak Spanish today. What were you speaking before you were speaking Spanish? Right? What were the ancient Aztecs and Mayans and what were they speaking? They were speaking different forms of Hebrew when you look it up. That's why we got the Los Lunas rock and writing all down the Yucatan. That was Hebrew, different forms of Hebrew, also known as broken Hebrew. So that shows you they took your heritage, took your culture away, took your language away, and gave you their language. The Native Americans, they made you cut your hair and go to boarding schools, right? And gave you English names. So there you go. Now let's continue. We showed that emphatically what that was speaking about, which was who the destroyer was, right? Back in Revelation 9 and 12, one woe is past, World War One. This is why I titled the lesson, that Ww1 set the stage. One woe is past, one war, one great destruction. This is the World War One is past. And it was tremendous. Once again, some of those figures, 40 million people died. Another 20 million were injured or wounded during that 5 years of war, which we're coming into that time again where, like it says in Second Ezra, the 15th chapter, the 16th chapter, that the men are going to be sent away to the wars, right? That the women are going to mourn not having no bridegrooms. And some of these women are going to be sent away to war too. So we're going to really see if you women are about that life that you try to propagate, you try to push. We're going to see if you all about that equality life, if you all about that, we're equal. We're going to see, right? Because war is starting to brew up and they starting to already send troops to Eastern Europe. And then you also got on the other side of the world, Taiwan, Taiwan and China. China saying they're going to annex Taiwan. They're going to go in and take it over. If anybody standing in the way, it's going to be great problems. You also got North Korea shooting off ballistic missiles. See, this is all the working of the Lord. Yahweh Shem Yahweh. We're in the time of the end. So one woe, Revelation 9 and 12, one woe is past. And behold, there come two more woes hereafter. So the first World War passed. It ended. Once again, the dates on that, on the World War I ending, let me see if I got the dates again, was June 1919. June 1919, right? That was when that woe ended. The Treaty of Versailles. So now it says two more coming thereafter. And once again, two more Salakia that came thereafter, which is just one so far. We're in the time of the third one. So World War II was 21 years after World War I. So that came shortly after, right? That was shortly after, which was World War I, the end of World War I, and then the start of World War II, which Hitler was the star of that war, and that was the vengeance coming back from the Germans, unto Europe for them being heavily penalized and being sanctioned like the Russians are. You think these sanctions ain't gonna lead to nothing? Oh yeah. That's an act of war. So now, let me read verse 12 again. It says, one woe is past, and behold, there come two woes more hereafter. Let's see if I get a precept or two. The two woes is coming hereafter. Let's get a few precepts on that. I'll get ready to close it out here, another another verse or so. Now, two more woes come in hereafter. Let's show that. So now I've quoted Revelation 6:4. The peace was going to be taken from the earth, right? So Esau has done that. He has the earth in turmoil and instability. Earth is unstable. Scriptures say when the righteous, matter of fact, let me just get it. There's one precept that comes to mind. Proverbs 29:2. When the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice, but when the wicked beareth rule, the people mourn. And Job 9:24, the earth is given into the hand of the wicked. The wicked is ruling. That's why the earth and the people are mourning. That's why the earth is still going through war. Showing you the small hats in 1948 says over in our land, they are not the people of the Most High. Why are they not the people of the Most High? Well, one major reason they're not is because the Lord said when He put the true Israelites back in the land, there would be no more war. There would only be peace. Right? There would be no more war. There would only be peace. So now let's further show that. You know, let's further get into that, showing you one woe is past and two more to come. So another way to show that is also in Revelation. Well, you can show it in Revelation 8 and 13, right? Which I started the lesson with. That's another way to show it. But another precept that comes to mind is let's go back to Genesis. Let's go to Genesis 27. Let me see where it's at. Showing you that this is Esau who's taking peace from the earth, the destroyer, right? The son of perdition, the man of sin, the man that made the earth as a wilderness. Genesis 27 and verse 30. Let's start at 38. Genesis 27 and 38. Let's get a few quick precepts going into that. Right? Genesis 27 and 38. And Esau said unto his father, which was Isaac, which was the Lord Yahweh Shai, for those that understanding, and can receive it. And Esau said unto his father, hast thou but one blessing? My father, bless me, even me also, O my father. And Esau lifted up his voice and wept. He was crying, right? Verse 39, showing you who the stronger and the weaker is, not just because he was crying, but he was crying out because he was hurt that he wasn't going to receive the blessing, right? Which he actually despised. He didn't want the blessing, but it was set up in the spirit when you read Romans the 9th chapter to be that way. Genesis 27 and 39. And Isaac his father answered and said unto him, behold, thy dwelling shall be the fatness of the earth and of the dew of heaven from above, meaning you're going to rule over all the people. You're going to sit as the highest of the high. You're going to control and rule everything. From your vantage point, the earth is going to be run from your perspective. That's why it talks about how the nations are drunk in the wine of Babylon. They're taking on the customs of America, which is Babylon the Great in the scriptures. So now, let's show that further. Verse 40, here's the point. It's verse 40, actually. Genesis 27 to 40. And by thy sword shalt thou live, and shalt serve thy brother, and it shall come to pass, when thou shalt have the dominion, that thou shalt break his yoke off of thy neck. Right? So it says, and by thy sword thou shalt live. Esau lives by the sword. Right? You live by the sword, you die by the sword. So Esau lives by the sword. That's another great precept too, showing who this man is. The brother Kazak Ban Yahweh, Hebrews 12 and 16. It says, lest there be any fornicator or profane person, this Esau, profane meaning outside of the temple. It says, for who for one morsel of meat sold his birthright. It had nothing, it had no meaning to him, it had no significance, which it was never for him, the birthright, only for the righteous. Esau was born first, just like in times past, Cain was born before Abel. That he was the line of the wicked, it's Cain. And then the righteous line was Abel, who was replaced by Seth. Right? So that was the two before. Then it came back, that Esau came out first, red and hairy all over again, and then the righteous came out second again. You see the parallels there? Because it was the same thing happening all over again. Right? Those two nations that was in the womb of Rebecca. So now let's continue to show that, you know, um, that was Esau. So when we go back, let me touch on this point too. I don't think I broke this part down here. Let's go back to Revelation 9 and 12. One woe is past, and behold, there come two woes more hereafter. World War II came 21 years later. That was the time of Hitler. That was the time when the America eventually got drawn in to World War II, and that was through Pearl Harbor being bombed, and then you had Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which was bombed by America, that was during the Manhattan Project. When you look it up, that history, the Manhattan Project, was created to destroy, and that was Hiroshima and Nagasaki, two cities in Japan that was hit, and that was Revelation the 13th chapter. When you read it, the fire that came down from heaven that ended World War II, and then now it says two more hereafter, and then now we're in the time of the beginning of the third. So I want to touch on that with a quick precept and see in this time, because the scriptures, all the prophets saw the destruction coming, and they described it with the thermonuclear destruction. So these nukes that have been created weren't created just to sit in museums or created to collect dust. They will be used. That's why North Korea keeps shelling them off over there into the Sea of Japan, right? That's why they keep shooting them off. They're showing that's that provocation, you know. So this is showing you that the missiles in the scriptures, which is the third, is going to be with the burning and fuel of fire. We're going to read Isaiah 9 and 5. For every battle of the warrior is with confused noise, which is these ancient battles that we see, right? It says, in garments rolled in blood, but this shall be with burning and fuel of fire. So World War III is going to be different from the other two, which World War One that we're reading about set the stage, because this one's going to be with burning and fuel of fire. Yep, that's another precept there. You know, that's going into the song of Moses, the brother just posted. Deuteronomy 32, right? That goes into that. It says the same thing in the song here in the Song of Moses, right? The glittering sword. So there's plenty of precepts that go into proving, um, that the destruction is speaking of the third will be with the missiles, which is why Ww1 set the tone and set the stage for how warfare, is even fought. How it went from being, conventional to technological, right? Which led to the creation of, after World War II, or to end World War II, it was the atomic energy, but it led to the creation of the nuclear, energy that's used now, by way of the ICBM, the Intercontinental Ballistic Missile. So, burning and fuel of fire will be the third woe, which is why it says what it says in Second Peter. Matter of fact, let me get that. That's further proof. Second Peter, we're almost done. Second Peter, I believe it's Second Peter 3. Yeah, Second Peter 3 and 10. But the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night. It says, in the which the heavens shall pass away with a great noise. Boom! It's gonna be the missiles. That's the great noise. The missiles are gonna drop. The ICBM is gonna be shot, and the missiles are gonna drop, and Babylon is gonna be completely destroyed. It says, in the which the heavens shall melt away with a great noise, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. Right? That's going back to what we read in Isaiah 9 and 5. Burning and fuel of fire. That's the fervent heat. The elements shall melt with fervent heat, it says. It says, and the earth also and the works that are therein shall be burned up. So it's going to be that great fire that's going to consume the earth. That great fire. Yep, that's another good one too. The day is going to come where it's going to burn as an oven. Right? It's that great fire. Shalom to the brothers and sisters getting on. So that's that burning and fuel of fire. Right? So as we go back, let's see if we can get a few more before we close it out. Just wanted to touch on that. Now, when you go back to Revelation 9 and 13, it says, and the sixth angel sounded, and I heard a voice from the four horns of the golden altar, which is before the Most High, or before the power. Continuing on, saying to the sixth angel, which had the trumpet, loose the four angels which are bound in the great river Euphrates. So you got the angels that's there, which World War III is going to start there. So it set the stage. World War I set the stage for two, and then the time we are in now is World War III, which is that great river Euphrates. The angels are there. They're going to bring all the nations down when you read Joel. I'm not going to go into that chapter. It's a whole nother can of worms, but it goes into Joel, the third chapter, which proves that. That's the valley of Jehoshaphat, Yahweh Shaphat in the Hebrew. We're in the time when the nation's going to gather in the valley of Yahweh Shaphat. See what the brother put here. Ak Yahweh Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai Brakatah once again, bro. Let's see what you got from me. Zechariah 12 and 14 and 12. And this shall be the plague wherewith, the Lord Yahweh will smite all the people that have fought against Jerusalem, all of our enemies. Going back to Psalm, the 83rd chapter. Their flesh shall consume away while they stand upon their feet. Yeah. And what's going to cause that? The missiles. We always show the scene with Sarah Connor in the Terminator movie. We reference that. It's also a movie with a video called "Stop Trying to Be God," by Travis Scott. Where he's burning up, he's on fire. It's in different movies, right? It says their eyes shall consume away in their holes. It says, and their tongue shall consume away in their mouths. People are going to be burnt to a crisp. There's not going to be breathable oxygen. So that shows you would have to make it out of here or you're going to be destroyed. So Lord willing, we go hard because we want the Lord to see our faith and hope that our faith and works are sufficient for salvation, right? We ain't promised anything. We got to endure to the end to get salvation. So we got to do the works and keep pushing and run through the tape. So those four angels, going back to Revelation 9 and 14, he says the four angels be loose in the great river Euphrates, right? That's when the Lord's going to allow the nations to come down into the valley of Jehoshaphat, which is in Joel, the third chapter. And you can read that to see that, brothers that know. Verse 15, and the four angels were loosed, which were prepared for an hour and a day and a month and a year, for to slay the third part of man. So for an hour, a day, a month, and a year, it says, to slay the third part of man. So what are the third part of men? You got the sons of God, the sons, of men. Sons of God are the Israelites, right? So in Genesis, the 6th chapter, those weren't angels, literal angels having sex with women on the earth, right? Those are all cunningly devised fables and lies from people that don't have the understanding of the scriptures, the same ones that told you hell is a place where people burn forever and ever and never, until we learn the truth, right? That death and hell is going to be cast into the lake of fire. And that hell is a condition that's played out on earth, same as heaven, right? We got the spirit realm where the Most High is, the third heaven, what's called space, the universe, the second, and the first heaven is here on earth, showing you that there's no understanding of these people who, are people, and we grew up, the majority of many of us in Christianity or Catholicism or Islam or something that wasn't giving you the whole understanding, that wasn't giving you any understanding, actually, wasn't giving you any truth. Now, so the third part of man, to slay the third part of man, Revelation 9 and 15, right? The third part of man is getting into the sons of God, the sons of man, the sons of the wicked. The sons of the wicked, the sons of men are the other nations. The sons of God are the Israelites, and the sons of the wicked is the third part of men, right? The wicked is the third part of men. So that is Esau, Edom, to slay Esau, Edom. That's what's going on when we read this verse in Revelation 9 and 15. There's an appointed time for this to happen. That's why it says for an hour and a day and a month and a year. All prophecies, all the visions were given for an appointed time when you read in Habakkuk. You read Habakkuk, the 3rd chapter. It's an appointed time for each prophecy to come to pass, even for the coming of our Lord Yahweh Shai, that the Most High has designated for him to come back. So that's the third, once again, going into the third part of men, right? That's Esau, Edom. Verse 16, and the number of the army of the horsemen were 200,000. So this is, 200 million. In the blue letter, in the NLT, it says, I heard the size of the army, which was 200 million mounted troops, 200 million missiles, right? Which that gets into the warheads as well. Every missile can have so many warheads in it. Speaking of the ICBM, so 200 million mounted troops, 200 million missiles, which is the army of the Lord, which is those missiles, which goes into Joel the second chapter when you read it, right? It says, and thus I saw the horses in the vision, and them that sat on them, having breastplates of fire. Once again, that's that the iron is on the metal. That's why it's called the bow of steel. It says the bow of steel gonna strike them through, right? So that's the armor, having breastplates of fire and of jacinth and brimstone. That's the destruction, and the heads of the horses. Speaking of the missiles, whereas the heads of lions, and out of their mouths issue fire, smoke, and brimstone, destruction. It says, by these three was the third part of men killed, Esau, Edom, by the fire and by the smoke and by the brimstone which issue out of their mouths, which is going to be those missiles, right? So now, verse 19, for their power is in their mouth. Speaking of, the front of them is their mouth, which would be the head. Actually, the head of the missile is the mouth. For their power is in their mouth, and in their tails, the back part of it, which is the fire, which is why it's known also in the Bible as the glittering spear, the glittering sword, right? It says, for their tails were like unto serpents, and had heads, and with them they do hurt. They're going to bring great destruction and pain onto the earth. Verse 20, and the rest of the men which were not killed by these plagues, yet repented not of their works. So it shows you Esau, Edom is going to be elites around the world, and a lot of Edomites are going to be hiding out in different parts of the world, and they're not going to repent, right, of their works, of their hands, that they should not worship devils and idols. They're going to still believe in these idols. They still ain't going to bow down and just serve the Lord. It says, and idols of gold and silver and brass and stone and of wood, which neither can see nor can hear, which neither can see nor hear nor walk. See, Esau believes in these idols, right? You don't believe in the power of Jacob because he's not righteous. So there's going to be people on the earth as well. That's why when it says the earth abideth forever, everybody ain't going to die on the earth. Everybody here in Babylon is going to be destroyed because it's going to be melted with fervent heat. But the elites are going to be hiding out in the depths of the sea, in the space retreats, and deep in different parts of the earth. As a matter of fact, when you look up New Zealand, the country of New Zealand, it leads right now in the most sold bunkers. They're selling the most bunkers, underground bunkers in New Zealand because these devils know that they can't hide out here because they're going to be destroyed. Right? This place is going to be melted. So various parts of the world and people in different places, the Lord has ordained them to be alive. You're gonna still have people who still ain't gonna want to serve the Yahweh Shem Yahushua, right? They're gonna be rounded up. It's gonna be part of the mission of the elect. When you read Ezekiel, I believe, Ezekiel the 20th chapter, I believe, right? Gonna purge out the rebels. A beautiful precept. That's the precept. Jeremiah 16:16. Behold, I will send for many fishers, saith the Lord Yahweh, and they shall fish them. And after I will send for many hunters, and they shall hunt them. Right? From all the holes, from every mountain and from every hill, and out of the holes of the rocks. Right? And out of the holes of the rocks. It's also found in see if I can pull this precept up. It says, and in the holes of the rocks. That's right, brother. Kazak by Yahweh. Here goes another one showing that. This is the book of Revelation 6. And I'm going to go right to the point. In 14, and the heaven departed as a scroll when it is rolled together, speaking of that mushroom cloud that comes from the destruction, come from the missiles hidden. And every mountain and island were moved out of their place. See, the earth is going to move exceedingly. Verse 15, the kings of the earth and the great men and the rich men and the chief captains and the mighty men and every bond and every free man hid themselves in the dens and in the rocks of the mountains, and said to the mountains and rocks, fall on us to hide us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. Hide us from the wrath of the Lamb, which is the coming of Yahweh Shai. And Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai, Barakatah, GMS, pray always, hopeful elect. Hey, Barakim, brother. Now, hide us from the throne. That's the precept, brother, that goes with the one you just brought out. Verse 17, for the great day of his wrath is come, and who shall be able to stand? Who's going to be able to stand in the day of the Lord? The elect are going to get beamed up on the chariots because, hey, the righteous are going to scarcely be saved. Anybody that's here in Babylon, they threw in various parts of the earth. And all the people that are the ones that the Lord's going to ordain to be alive, in different parts, they're going to be rounded up and dealt with. And then you're going to have those that's, in these hiding places, so to speak, and they're going to be rounded up and dealt with too, right? You know, so now, that's right, brother Akyawasap, all is going to be thrown down. So, Yahweh was speaking of that. Now, let's go back and close it out. Revelation 9 and 21. Neither repented they of their murders, nor of their sorcery. Speaking of Esau, Isaiah the 47th chapter gets into that. He still ain't going to repent from the murders and sorceries, nor of their fornication, right? Spiritual fornication and other. Esau's a weirdo. He's a wicked weirdo. That's what he is. He's a wicked weirdo. So all the fornication, unlawful sex, right? Illicit sex according to Most High, and spiritual fornication, pushing, the philosophies of the world unto the people, telling our people and telling the people of the world in his rulership, you can come as you are, do what you want to do as thou will, right? You can take on any belief you want to. A man could be a woman could be a man. You could change your gender. You could do all this stuff. You do all this stuff. Let me see what the brother got. Kazak Ban Yahweh, Isaiah 26 and 10. Let favor be showed to the wicked, yet will he not learn righteousness. There's nothing you can do to make him right, because it also tells you in the Bible he's known as the crooked serpent. And brother, any one of y'all brothers can put in crooked serpent and post that scripture after I read this. Put in crooked serpent and post that scripture. It's going to go in line with this. That's what Esau is. He's a crooked serpent. It says, Isaiah 26 and 10, let favor be showed to the wicked, yet he will not learn righteousness. In the land of uprightness will he deal unjustly, and will not behold the majesty of the Lord Yahweh by Hashem Yahushua. See, he's going to deal unjustly because of the violence against our brother Jacob. Shame shall cover thee. Shame is going to cover these devils, right? From their elites. They're going to be the first fruits of slavery, starting with the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, the Gettys, the DuPonts, all these families like that. All these, trillionaire families. All these very rich men on the earth, right? They're going into slavery, right? They're going into slavery. I don't know if any one of y'all brothers can find it. If not, I can find it. But the crooked serpent is going into Esau. Crooked serpent. That's one that says the piercing serpent. Let me show you. It's another one. Yeah, the piercing serpent, but you got the crooked serpent too, which is Esau, also making a reference to Esau. Oh yeah, okay. I think that's it. No. Job 26 is what it is. Yep, there it is, brother. Akyawasap, the water brother. Job 26 and 13. By his spirit he have garnished the heavens. His hand hath formed the crooked serpent. So Esau is the crooked serpent as well. That could be applied to Esau. What's crooked cannot be made straight, right? He can't be made righteous. So that can apply to Esau as well, right? He have formed the crooked serpent. So Esau is that crooked serpent. And that also goes into Leviathan, goes into Leviathan. The brother spoke here. Esau's that is here. The precept the brother brought, Isaiah 27 and 1. In that day, the Lord Yahweh, with his sword and great and strong sword, shall punish Leviathan the piercing serpent, even Leviathan that crooked serpent, and he shall slay the dragon that is in the sea. Yeah, Esau gonna get destroyed. Lord's gonna do away with him, right? Because remember, he was in all the seas, all the lands. When you read in Revelation the 17th chapter, he was in all the seas, all the lands, amongst all the people. So that crooked serpent Esau is gonna get destroyed. That's the time we were in. So Revelation 9 and 21 again, neither repented they of their murders. They're not gonna repent, right? They were made to be the wicked. It says of their murders, nor of their sorceries, nor of their fornication, nor of their thefts. They're going to continue to be the wicked. That's what the Most High, what he chose them to be. That's what he made them to be, is the wicked. So Lord willing, that was edifying to the believers. that heard, viewed the lesson, or will view it and hear it. Lord willing, some precepts in there. Brothers can go back and check it out, all through the Spirit. You know, so I'll be jumping back on. Here as often as the Spirit leads. Right, we move it through the Spirit, brothers. And to all of you who watched the lesson, I say Barakim. Once again, Lord willing, you was edified. I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, by Hashem Yahushai, by Hashem Rakakwadash, Thum Yad, as always. Peace, love, blessings, and salutations. To the hopeful elect, double honor to the elders, to the elder apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who rule well and are the true teachers of Israel today. Peace, love, blessings, and salutations, to all the believers, right? To the Akim and Akwafim who listen and believe on Yahweh Shem Yahushai. But to the house of David, the brothers is pushing day in and day out. Habayah from Adamadah. Hope you brothers continue to push, run through the tape, keep making your those spiritual treasures, sending them up to the heavens. That's what it's all about. We in the time of the Lord's visitation to the earth. We're in the time of great judgment, and we are in a time, of the end. So with that, I hope that was edifying to you brothers, to you believers, and I say shalom.